everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here. That was a nice little voice crack there. Hope you're all doing well. Festus is coming. The doctor is in. This is definitely a Festus the Leechlord teaser. If it's not, I will eat one of my limbs off. Because that is how hilariously confident I am that the doctor is in. I am super excited to see Festus. The glow up for Azazel was absolutely incredible. So I'm hoping that Dr. Festus will have a similar level of just being brought to life in a truly terrifying and intimidating way. But knowing Creative Assembly, he's going to be pretty disgusting to look at. But, you know, in a loving way, I say that. So, hope you're all doing well. There is so much to talk about today, and there are things that I'm not even going to be covering in this video that I'm going to have to talk about probably tomorrow. Yeah, hopefully nothing crazy gets released tomorrow, but there's so much going on in the Warhammer sphere, and it's great, but it's also like, sweet Jesus, could I just have one day, one day where I could focus on other stuff? But the answer is no. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into all the things I want to talk about today. I will have timestamps on this video because it's probably going to be a little long, as there is more that I'm going to talk about beyond just Total War. As you can see here, I've got some lovely tabs open that I'm going to hop to. So, all right, I apologize for the weird jump cut there. I had to go pick up my car. But anyway, continuing on with things that are going on in the... All right, apologize for the weird jump cut there. I had to go pick up my car. But in any event, the next thing I wanted to talk about is that Warcry has revealed a new Warband. And you may say, why the hell are we talking about Warcry right now? And my answer will be, because I want to, and I think this faction looks really cool. So these are the Centurion Marshals, which are the Bellacore faction for Warcry, and I have to say, they look absolutely incredible. I absolutely love the design of these guys. They have a very distinct and unique armor. Like, they're very heavily armored, which I love and appreciate for worshippers of chaos. But they also have a very distinct style of armor and weapons that is very unique looking. Something that Nathan, or Great Book of Grudges, my co-host on the podcast, said that I definitely agree with is they kind of have almost a Nippon or Japanese feel to their style of armor. The way they kind of have this like lacquered component of their armor, and like the style of their helms. But they just look really badass, and I just kind of wanted to draw attention to them. And of course, their big guy is none other than... sorry, these are the Chaos Legionnaires. Sorry, this is the Centurion Marshal. So the Centurion Marshals, as you can see, are centaurs. They are terrifying, evil, giant, spooky centaurs that are not only quite large, but, you know, these got like a net and a spear and... a big mace thing and an axe. So he's got 4 arms and 4 legs. Crazy. But I really like this design, and just kind of wanted to draw attention to it because, I don't know, there's a lot of really cool shit going on right now in Warcry, and I think I may be about to, I don't know, I might be about to start collecting Warcry. I'm not sure. I wasn't going to originally because I was just, you know, oh no, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm not gonna worry about this. You know, it's fun, but I don't know, man. These guys, it says these guys are designed to be the classic Chaos Undivided look. I really like this warband. So I don't know if I'd want to collect these guys or if I would want to go Serpent's Fang. But I'm gonna be honest, Warcry is getting more and more tempting. I actually kind of find it funny. They're like, these guys are classic Warriors of Chaos design. This guy's face, I don't know, this guy's face looks like too pure. He looks too innocent. This guy almost looks like a Bretonian disguised as a chaos boy. But like they've even got a mutant on their team. You can see this guy looks like he's mutated to have cloven hooves. But yeah, I don't know. They're just super cool. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. So if you have not been keeping up with Vermintide, you should, because they've been releasing roughly every single week. They've been releasing some really, really cool lore stories. So, you know, the last one was on the 15th, and then the 22nd, which is, of course, a week later. You know, then there was the 8th, and then there was the 1st. So they've been releasing lots of really cool stories that not only help develop the universe of Warhammer Fantasy and add lots of really cool little tidbits to the end times and the Vermintide characters, but also tend to hint at things to come. For instance, if you've been keeping up with these stories, you probably have been aware of a lot of the 4th career reveals before they were officially announced. And you were probably also aware that Be'lakor was up and coming before that was officially announced. And as you can tell by the title of this article, Career Convection, this article is actually about Sienna, and is about that the Bright College has basically reached a level of desperation where they're reaching out to all of the wizards they could possibly think of, regardless of, you know, if they're on good terms or not with the various with the Bright College, to try and convince them to come back, because they're getting desperate, because the end times are essentially in full swing, but it's still very, very early in the end times. And I strongly believe that this will be building up to Sienna's 4th career reveal. Not only because it has literally the word career in the title, but because when you read about it, it's literally reading about that the Bright College has sent a messenger to Sienna and said, hey, we want you to come back. And if you come back, should something happen to Volans, Thyris Gorman, the current patriarch of the college, then perhaps it's time for you to take over and be matriarch of the Bright College, because Sienna is just very powerful. And Sienna is a very powerful character. But obviously, we know that she's not going to end up leaving the Vermintide, the Uberstrike 5. But I do think that this is building up to her 4th career reveal. I don't know what it's going to be. Kind of the main argument seems to be for some kind of religious career, because that's kind of been the theme for the 4th careers, is that basically every character has become attuned to a god. In this, which, you know, you had Kruber became attuned to the Lady of the Lake, and that's how we got Grail Knight. And then Barden became attuned to, I believe it was Morgrim, one of the ancestor gods, and that's how we got the Outcast Engineer. And then Saltspire obviously became more attuned with Sigmar, and we got the Warrior Priest. Carillion became attuned with, I want to say, the goddess that she threw in her lot with was, I think she signed up with Moray Heg. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but she threw in with one of the Elven Pantheon, and that's how we got Sister of the Thorn. And now all we've got left is Sienna. So a lot of people are asking, who is she going to throw in with? Many people have suggested she's going to throw in with Myrmidia, because Sienna is a native of Estalia. That being said, she doesn't seem to be that terribly tied to her homeland. So I would be kind of surprised for her to go full, like, Myrmidian, not warrior priest, but like priest of Myrmidia. This indicates that she might be, she might tie herself more closely to her college, and maybe we'll see, her become like an exorcist or one of the wizard hunters, or a power, just someone that has a much more powerful position within the College of Magic. But I personally am still thinking that she's going to be influenced by the return of Nagash, and is going to end up learning to control the lore of undeath as things get crazy over there. And because many wizards, the lore of undeath, a lot of people think that, oh, well, that's just like being a necromancer, and it's not really. When the end times happened and Nagash was resurrected, the lore of undeath was a common lore. So it was added to, essentially, it was a lore of magic that anybody could take. It did not matter what your usual restrictions were. If you could cast magic, you could use the lore of undeath, because Nagash's resurrection was such a massive event, and it had such a distorting effect upon the winds of magic that everyone was able to wield this new lore, even if they didn't really know anything about necromancy and had never touched necromancy in the past. That's how we got Balthazar Gelt becoming a necromancer for a while and stuff like that. So I really do think that's going to happen to Sienna. For me, the question is that going to be Sienna's 4th career, or is that going to have to wait until a 5th career? But in any event, I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that if you haven't read these stories, you absolutely should. They're amazing. I've been thinking about, I really probably need to sit down and like actually cover all of them, or at least a significant number of them, and just kind of draw like a broad sketched out map of like where we are exactly in the end times and what are all the important threads going on in Vermintide, because there's a lot going on. Like Sienna's sister has returned and is hanging somewhere around the keep and has been contacting Loner, and we know that Sienna's sister is a necromancer, but there's also a vampire that's hanging around the area, and it's been kind of implied that it might be Genevieve, but it also might just be another Lamian vampire who has an old relationship with Loner and is like doing him favors and stuff. So we have 2 undead themed characters running around, but we're also getting stuff about Barden's daughter, who has vanished from their hold. She was last seen, I believe, on an ironclad that was going out somewhere, and like we don't know where she is, and that's like a major thread for Barden. We've been learning more about Saltspire. Saltspire is actually having a lot of, his faith is being very heavily shaken right now, and while he still takes a lot of strength from being a warrior priest, you know, they've kind of revealed that the whole Chaos Wastes FLC and that entire storyline, Saltspire always believed it was Sigmar that set him on that path, but it's looking more and more like it was actually Be'lakor that set him on that path, and that Be'lakor essentially tricked Saltspire into clearing the way for him to attack the Citadel of Eternity. But at the same time, like, Saltspire is legitimately manifesting these powers of Sigmar, so Be'lakor is trying to convince him that he's actually been an agent of Be'lakor this entire time, and that, you know, he tricked him and that Sigmar isn't real, or Sigmar, like, isn't actually where he's getting his power from. But I would argue that's Be'lakor being typical Be'lakor, and it's a half-truth, you know, where a lot of the time Be'lakor is co-opting what an actual god is doing. Do I think actual Sigmar wanted Saltspire to find the Citadel of Eternity and be, like, killing lots of Skaven and stuff, and becoming a warrior priest? Yes, I do. I think that's actually legitimate, but I think Be'lakor is also piggybacking off of it and trying to claim full credit for an assignment that he actually didn't contribute that much to. But you know, there's some really interesting themes going on there. And then Carillion is obviously having a lot of struggles with that. Athel Loren is in a really bad place right now because Queen Ariel is dying by this point in the timeline. She's already been mortally wounded after the last battle of Bretonnia, or the last battle for Bretonnia, which was one of the final engagements in the Civil War, where King Luwin Leoncoeur was believed killed by Malabad the Black Serpent, his bastard son. But during that battle, Ariel was mortally wounded by Lilith, though nobody knows Lilith is responsible yet. And so by this point in the timeline, Ariel has already hidden herself away within the Oak of Ages and is trying to heal, but she's dying. And we're waiting for Alariel, the Everqueen, to show up, which I believe she already has, but word has not gotten back to Carillion yet that Ariel is dead, and that Alariel has basically absorbed Ariel into herself and came out as kind of like the dominant personality / power, which led to all sorts of shenanigans. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on right now with Vermintide. And if you haven't already, I would really recommend following them on Twitter. It's a really good way to kind of keep up with what's going on story-wise. And I would recommend keeping a very close eye on them in the coming month or so, because I genuinely believe we're going to be seeing some Sienna news. All right. And with that, we got the big boy article today. So we have an Immortal Empire's race updates. So this article is basically going to be taking a look at some of the most significant updates you're going to see in August with the Immortal Empire's beta. This is not going to cover everything that's different. It's only going to be covering kind of the most significant updates. So let's go ahead and hop into this article. So welcome back, Total War Warhammer fans, to another installment of the Immortal Empire's blog series. This week we'll be taking a closer look at some of the most significant race updates you'll experience this August when the Immortal Empire's beta finally arrives, specifically the Vampire Counts, Lizardmen, Dark Elves, and Norsca. Before we explore those juicy details, it's important to recognize that the importing races from Total War Warhammer 1 and 2 into Immortal Empires is no simple task. It's far more complex than a single copy and paste from game to game. Warhammer 3 introduced significant updates to the series in the form of new mechanics, overhauled game systems, and a host of new foes to face, meaning that many races required substantial adaptations to survive a fresh new world of war and politics. As such, while these updates won't be quite to the same scale as what you'll see with the Warriors of Chaos, they will nonetheless evolve their playstyles in important and meaningful ways. So let's start with the Vampire Counts, which is going to be pretty interesting. So, Vampire Counts. Everyone's favorite bloodsuckers were in a difficult place coming out of Warhammer 2, mainly relying on a devastating two-punch combo of free skeleton armies and the evisceration of their enemies with the winds of death. While it was a power trip at times, it did eventually get a bit dry. On top of that, changes to systems like the Winds of Magic in Warhammer 3 have a heavy impact on the race, so the team spent time enhancing them in ways that help them stay fresh, as fresh as an exhumed corpse. So, well, okay, we'll get into this one. We'll talk about each race at the end of their respective segment. So the headline, free skeletons are gone. No more free skeletons. You'll still have ways to make them grave dirt cheap, but not to the same extent as before. We know this is a big change, one that might disappoint some people, but it not only distorted the Vampire Counts gameplay too much, but made much of the roster obsolete, particularly in conjunction with the reduced supply line penalties in Warhammer 3. To make up for the loss, we've made a whole host of other changes that we hope will more than make amends for it. Here's a look at some of the key changes. Across the board, balance changes to the roster. Leadership increases to most units, adjustments to ethereal units, and the ability to recruit Mourngulls in a campaign if you own the Vampire Coast DLC. I love that. I love that so much. Improvements to raise dead pools, which now offer better units by default and scale up with vampiric corruption, making them less reliant on battle sites. This is amazing. We'll talk about why in a little bit. Reshuffle of recruitment buildings, with many units now available earlier and more easily. Great. Revamp tech trees, skill trees, and bloodline effects to give the race access to powerful new effects, such as increased healing caps and extra winds of magic. As for individual lords, we've already highlighted some of the changes coming to the undead power couple, Vlad and Isabella von Karstein, in our dedicated factions blog. But don't worry, Manfred and the Necromancer lords will have their time in the moon too. Manfred von Karstein has moved to the Southlands, where he seeks the unholy books of Nagash. As the most magically gifted of the vampire lords, he also has received increased magic reserves, and his Master of the Black Arts ability now boosts his spell mastery by 25%. Yeah, so his spells are going to hit hard. To complement his new starting position in the Haunted Forest, Helman Gorst now starts the campaign mounted on his corpse cart and can acquire skills that enhance his aura abilities, granting powerful faction-wide buffs to zombies. If you want to drown the world in rotting flesh while watching from the back of your sweet ride, he's the legendary lord for you. Not to be outdone by this young upstart, Kimmler has also upped his game. His best bud Krell will now be a permanent summon by default, while Kimmler's skill tree serves to supercharge Krell's combat stats. All right, so what do I think about the Vampire Count changes? 10 out of 10, honestly. I am, I'll say 9.5 out of 10. I'll get into why in a minute. But I am very, very excited with the Vampire Count change. Personally, I was not a huge fan of the, like they said, Vampire Counts in campaign had a very one-note strategy, which was that it was so good you really couldn't not do it. But basically, you would open your tech tree and you would rush to free zombies and free skeletons as fast as you possibly could, most notably free skeletons. You'd rush to that as fast as you could, and then you would build an army with like a really, really powerful lord and 19 zombie or skeleton units in his army, and you would just do that over and 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 over again. And that was basically the only thing you could do, because in Warhammer 2, the supply lines tended to be so punishing, and a lot of the vampire units were so difficult to get a hold of that it was just kind of your only viable option in campaign. But it led to the vampire counts being extremely boring, in my opinion. It was significantly more difficult to have like armies that utilized, you know, more than 2 units in the entire roster. And it also made a lot of characters kind of feel... I felt like it made picking your lord just a situation of, oh, I'm just going to pick the strongest lord because, you know, I'm going to have a really crappy army, at least until very late in the campaign. And then I'm probably just going to proceed to hire really powerful vampires and give them 19 skeletons to follow around my other armies. And it was dumb. It was really dumb. Although I'm sure there are people out there who are really upset that particular cheese strat is gone. Like, I'm sure Legend's not a fan of that, but I think that it just kind of, it was too boring and it was too efficient. I think there is a point in the game where if a strategy is so good and it's so effective that it's the only viable way to play that faction, then that particular strategy needs to be toned down and every single other strategy needs to be toned up. And, you know, I think that mixing things up to allow the race to really like take a full breath instead of just trying to constantly laser beam this one particular strategy is a good change. And granted, we don't know exactly, they do mention that you're still able to get really, really cheap skeletons and stuff. Personally, what I'm really, really hoping is that the Master Necromancers have received a really significant overhaul as far as their skill trees go. One of the things that's been talked about a lot is people being like, well, I don't understand like what we're supposed to do with the Master Necromancers. Like, they're so dumb. Like, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, well, they should just remove the Master Necromancer. Like, he shouldn't be a lord. Or maybe the Master Necromancer should evolve into a vampire at a certain point, which to me has always felt like just bad. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, the Master Necromancer should just be good. Like, you should just find a way to make him work. And I honestly think the best, because a lot of people wonder, what is the difference between a Master Necromancer and a vampire? Isn't a vampire just the better option? The answer is no, actually. The difference between a Master Necromancer and a Vampire Lord is that Master Necromancers tend to have significantly more knowledge and to rely much more heavily on having like massive hordes, giant armies, and raising just horrifying amounts of undead, but they tend to be more of the like need to be directly controlled by someone undead. So what we would think is like lesser tier dead, whereas vampires tend to be single powerhouses who get involved in situations personally. So they're up there fighting in combat. They're up there awakening other vampiric creatures, acquiring the allegiance of blood knights, and really manipulating their vampiric powers to the utmost. Of course, there are some vampires that specialize very heavily in magic, but even among those, like Manfred von Karstein tends to be less of a horde character and more of a using his magic to rip you for limb from limb kind of character. You know, his magic is more about being offensive, whereas a Master Necromancer is almost, you can think of it as being more defensive. So one thing I'm really hoping to see with this, the revamped skill trees, is that I'm really hoping to see that the Master Necromancer will be the way you get those really powerful cheap armies. You know, I'd love to see the Master Necromancer be much more about, he improves, like he really focuses on spreading vampiric corruption, getting significantly cheaper units to a very reduced recruitment cost and a very reduced upkeep cost. Like, he is what allows you to have really big hordes, and he specializes in it. You know, the Master Necromancer, you know, they've mentioned that they're going to be doing things that allow you to increase the heal caps, which I love. That is such a really, really cool ability, increasing healing caps. Because ever since healing caps have been restored, it's kind of, or limited, I should say, because way back in the days of Warhammer 1, we used to have unlimited healing caps, meaning that you could heal for eternity, and it got a little over the top with the vampire counts, which is why they actually introduced healing caps from a balance perspective. Was that a lot of people just kind of got to the point where they would play vampire counts and they would just endlessly heal their armies, especially because back then you could have an endless amount of magic with certain kinds of builds very, very easily. And so people would like go into fights, they'd fight with their army, and regardless of what they had left at the end of the battlefield, once the enemy was broken, but you know, the battle was allowed to keep going, the vampire count players would just gather their armies together in these little huddles and would spam cast overcast Invocation of Nehek on themselves just over and over and over and over again to get their armies back up to full. So basically they never took any losses, and they had completely meaningless campaigns because there was no challenge. Like, there was literally zero challenge in what they were doing. As long as a unit did not completely die, they would almost always go back to the campaign map with a fully healed army, which was terrible game design. Like, that was a horrible thing. I realized that if you're someone that you're like, well, I wanted to I like min-maxing and I thought it was cool, well, great, you can mod it. But for the base game, it just completely removed any challenge and was terrible, which is why they got rid of it. And now we have healing caps. Because like that's what like really powerful casualty replenishment should be for. That's what making sure that you take smart fights are for. Is that you shouldn't be able to just completely mitigate any and all forms of damage that you take so easily. You know, that should be something like if you got a level 50 character running around and that level 50 character has significantly increased heal caps on his army, and he also has significantly more extra winds of magic, like he's earned the ability to do that, which I think is a much better solution of, you know, allowing everyone to have their cake and eat it too. So I'm really excited about these changes. I'm really interested to see the revamped trees and bloodline effects. Hopefully that means in general they're going to be more powerful, because a lot of them were pretty meh. So hopefully they'll be much more interesting. The reshuffle of recruitment buildings, really good for vampire counts. A lot of their units were just, it took way too long to get them. They had, I would almost argue that they had too many buildings when it came to military recruitment, because you had to constantly have like 2 buildings to get a single unit, right? You couldn't just get a Graveguard from a tier 3 building. You had to get the tier 3 building and you had to build an armory, which not only is that prohibitively expensive and time consuming, because that means you've got to build like a tier 3 settlement and have 2 buildings within that tier 3 settlement, or 2 tier 3 settlements in a province, with one of them having the zombie or the Graveguard building and the other one having the armory. It was just too much. And it slowed down their recruitment process way too much. So I'm really glad to see that they've shuffled that around, and hopefully they've simplified it and also made it significantly faster to acquire a lot of the types of units. Because like some of them, like there were certain kinds of units, particularly Graveguard, and like certain kinds of corpse carts and sometimes ethereal units, but there were just a significant number of units that just, it was too difficult to get access to them for no reason, which once again forced you to rely on these massive 20 stacks of garbage tier units, because that was the only option you had. So like we had to have free skeletons because the only goddamn thing I could recruit was skeletons. And if my skeletons were going to survive against the Empire, I needed to have 40 of them, not 20 of them, because they were getting their asses kicked. So because of that, I had to have 3 armies, you know, 2 armies, 3 armies of skeletons led by really powerful characters, because that was the only way the army worked. Now they've addressed that. So we don't need the free skeletons anymore, hopefully. And I wouldn't mind seeing very cheap skeletons as long as they're under restrictive ideals. Like, oh, the Master Necromancer is able to have like all these skeletons. Maybe he also has like he has more casts of Raised Dead, and he's really able to go like full horde, so he could just drown the enemy in bodies, and then you can support him with a more elite army, so you can still have that feel. Or, you know, you just support him with more elite units, ideally. But I'm really interested to play the vampire counts. I can't wait to see how they're going to be with all the changes. The improvements to the Raised Dead. So this thing is super exciting to me because it makes vampiric corruption matter, which I am so fucking excited about. The idea that you now get more units and better units depending on your vampiric corruption is such a nice change, because the battle sites were cool. Like I liked the idea that, oh yeah, you're able to make lots and lots of dead depending on how many people have died in a region, but the idea that like it was everything about Raised Dead was purely tied to the amount of corpses you had, that to me didn't work as well, because it just kind of encouraged you to just kind of sit in one area and keep attracting the AI, and just make a slaughterhouse where you had just a hilarious amount of corpses so that you could recruit a lot of really big, powerful units instantly using the Raised Dead pool. Now it's like, oh, vampiric corruption plays very heavily into it, which makes sense, because if you have an area that's very densely concentrated with dark magic and it's become heavily corrupted by vampires, that is a place where you would expect a lot of corpses to be getting up on their own. Like, they don't really need a necromancer, but you're also luring in vampiric creatures. You know, this is places where Vargulfs have come to reside, and you have Vargeist swooping through the skies, and Terrorgeist have started to come crawling out of the caves and things. It's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This works. So I personally am so excited about this change, and it makes vampiric corruption something where it's just, you're much more invested in it. It's no longer just a system of, well, I have to have enough vampiric corruption so that I'm just not taking attrition damage, and that's all it is, because that's just very basic, and a lot of the time attrition can just kind of be very easily negated by like, oh, I'll just enter raid stance or encampment stance. No, you know, for this it's, oh, not only if vampiric corruption is really high do I not take attrition and I heal more, but I also get access to better undead units that I can recruit immediately, which is great. It just makes me that much more invested to make as sure as I can that I have 100 vampiric corruption where I'm going. You know, I really want to be showing up places and say, okay, I need to have 100 vampiric corruption in this province that I'm attacking, because if I have 100 vampiric corruption here, I know that means that should I take a couple of big hits in this upcoming fight, that I will be able to recruit some heavy hitters to replace those losses, which is great. And then across the board balance changes, they don't give us any specifics, but increased leadership, great. Adjustments to ethereal units, hopefully ethereal is much stronger, great. Like, I don't care if they're making ethereal units hit harder or be tankier, but they gotta pick a side, because right now they're like vaguely tanky, but they're not tanky enough to justify how much they hit like wet noodles. And we've seen this in battle footage. Like, we've seen this with vampire counts, and I've seen this while playing Warhammer 3 battles, is that the ethereal units, they are less tanky. Like, ethereal units tend to be less about just pure survivability, but they hit like trucks now, because a lot of them not only have significantly better stat lines, but they do pure armor piercing damage. So armor just is not a thing as far as the ethereal units are concerned. To them, they just completely ignore it. They don't give a shit how much armor you have, because they do pure AP, which is great. They ignore armor. That's awesome. And then you can have Mourngulls! Yay! So Mourngulls, of course, are originally a vampire count unit. If you actually read the Vampire Coast descriptions about the Mourngulls, it's actually kind of funny, because it makes it apparent that the Mourngulls aren't necessarily a natural part of the Vampire Coast. They have to be kind of lured to the Vampire Coast, because Mourngulls originate from mountains. They specifically show up from very cold climates. And those, of course, usually being mountainous climates. So it's these high atmosphere, way up away from the ocean mountains, typically covered in snow. That's where the Mourngull is native. So it's always been a little weird that they were in the Vampire Coast, but not the Vampire Counts. And now they've rectified that, which I think is really, really cool. So they're just a natural part of your roster whenever you play any of the Vampire Count characters, regardless, so long as you own the Vampire Coast DLC, which is great. I love seeing those I love seeing units show up in rosters as long as it like makes sense, even if they're not necessarily a part of that base roster. All right, so Manfred, we've talked about his start position. but we love to see it with his Master of the Black Arts being buffed. So he has increased magic reserves just naturally, which is fantastic. That means that Manfred has more Winds of Magic than any other Vampire Lord character, which is absolutely fantastic. That makes him feel like Manfred. And of course, he has 25% spell mastery, which means that his spells are 25% more effective, which is great. Love to see it. Helman Gorst. So Helman Gorst now starts on his corpse cart. He starts mounted on his corpse cart. That's great. To me, that's Helman Gorst's thing. His truly unique focus is zombies. He's the zombie character. I've always very strongly felt that I really feel like they should switch the Raised Dead between Gorst and Kimmler, because Kimmler to me has always felt like the white character, being that he's all about like Krell and Graveguard and White Kings, because he messes around a lot with Krell's Legion, which Krell has his own army of just whites. He was buried with a lot of other dead boys who have often been seen alongside him. There's kind of like a running theme about it when you read stories about Heinrich Kimmler and Krell, is that Kimmler is constantly attempting to get his claws around these really, really powerful legions of whites that are then bound with Krell and make like really, really scary combos. They're kind of Krell's personal army, but Kimmler needs a lot of magic to get them up and running, because they're very difficult to animate because they're such an elite form of undead. But we'll get to Kimmler in a minute. For Gorst, zombies should be his shindig. Like, he should be the character that is just, he's the zombie boy. He is the one who zombies. And I'm really, really glad to see that that's what they've really leaned into. As he starts on his corpse cart, you have a zombie mount, essentially. It also, I think, will help Gorst feel significantly more powerful at the start of his campaign, because his corpse cart is kind of his whole thing, in that it gives him a lot of his really powerful effects. It makes him a Mortis engine, so when he's in close combat, he's constantly dealing damage to people around him. He also has the other buffs of all the other corpse carts, and it just makes him feel really, it makes him feel very unique and powerful. And very different from, Kimmler, where Heinrich Kimmler is more of like elite undead, your spirits, your whites, your elite cavalry and stuff. Gorst, on the other hand, is more of taking your lesser undead and really evolving them up into something truly special and crazy. Like, honestly, if I could have my way, I would switch it where the Ravenous Dead starting follower that Kimmler has, where he makes the zombies in his army have the hunger, so like they regenerate in close combat. I would give that to Gorst, and then give Gorst's unique Raise Dead spell where he raises whites or a Graveguard or a White King instead of zombies. I would give that to Kimmler. I just feel like that would be much more thematic for those two to switch those particular tickets. But I digress. And then there's Kimmler. And Kimmler, I will say, is why I put this at a 9.5 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. Because I am fully on board with Krell should be a legendary hero. Period, end of story. Krell, while I do think that Krell should be part of Kimmler's campaign, so if you want Krell in your army, you play as Kimmler, or you have to confederate Kimmler. But I do think he should be a legendary hero. Now that we're seeing legendary heroes become such a significantly more common theme within the game, they're able to have their own powerful magic items, they're able to have unique skill trees, they're able to just be much more exciting. Krell needs to be a legendary hero. That's just all there is to it. I don't think they're ever going to be able to make him powerful enough where he feels better as a summon than he does as a standalone individual. I think that if we could get Krell to be a legendary hero where he has his magic items, he has the armor of Krell, or he has his Baroque red armor, and he also has the black axe of Krell. Like, once he has his own items and his own cool skill tree, that's just going to feel significantly better. I would still, give him a really cool trait where if he is sharing an army with Kimmler, he gives, a bunch of bonuses. Just like how if Orion is sharing an army with Ariel, Orion gets the Guardian trait. Or if Vlad and Isabella are in the same army, they give each other a bunch of buffs. Just do the same thing with Kimmler and Krell. Give Krell for Krell's starting trait, give him an ability that when if he's in the same army as Kimmler, he has the Guardian aura, and he also gets significant stat buffs. There you go. Easy peasy, problem solved. And, you know, maybe he also buffs like Graveguard around him or something. But yeah, I will say very, very pleased with the vampire counts. I think they have a super promising future. I'm really, really excited to play their campaign and experience it for myself. Moving on to the Lizardmen, my boys, my sweet, sweet baby lizards. So, this is going to be interesting. Let's see what happens. All right. We know that Lizardmen and Update together might generate some excitement, so we'll get the bad news out of the way first. The geometric web is still pretty much the same. No! God, no! They shot me. Before I could even take my first full step in excitement, they shot me in the kneecap. Though it looks like it's had a few adjustments, so that's nice at least. The geometric web is still pretty much the same, other than a few adjustments to reward you for fulfilling the great plan. We fully recognize that it's right for a more substantial update and hope to find an opportunity to do so in the future. Well, that's good. So they're acknowledging it's a problem. They're acknowledging that, you know, yes, we're going to take another look at it in the future. I'm totally fine with that. For me, just getting CA to acknowledge that something is a problem and be like, hey, we know, we know this is a problem and we're working on it. To me, that means miles. I don't need to have it fixed immediately. I just need to make sure they understand that it needs to be fixed and that at some point it would be really nice for them to dedicate the resources to do so. So anyway, let's hop into what is actually going on. We'll start with the humble skinks. As has long been requested, Tehenuin now unlocks Regiments of Renown units by leveling up and will be able to use his sacrificial pyramid to generate extra blessed spawning units. Yes! Thank you, God! Sotek, thank you! Okay, so Tehenuin is basically fixed. All of Tehenuin's problems have basically been solved in one fell swoop. That is going to do so much for his campaign, because blessed spawning units are good. I will make a video probably, I want to say next week, but honestly, things have been so busy with CA just doing like reveal after reveal after reveal that I don't know when I'm gonna have time to do it. But there is a video I want to make in regards to the Lizardmen about a mechanic that I kind of want to propose for them that I think could really take the concept of blessed spawning to the next level while being a feasible thing to do. Because I think a lot of people will agree with me where blessed spawning units are cool, they're great, but it is a very limited feature in that they don't seem to be able to, or unwilling to, add new types of blessed spawnings. So like, yeah, you get blessed Saurus, but like you can't get a blessed salamander unit. Well, actually, that wouldn't really make sense. Well, no, you have blessed dinosaurs, so yeah. But it's like, you can't have blessed salamanders. You can't have a blessed Stradsaurian. You can't have blessed Ripperdactyls. Like, any unit that's been added since the base Lizardman release doesn't have a blessed variant, which is kind of a bummer. But like, I understand that the goal behind that is probably that, well, we don't want to like introduce blessed units that you can't have unless you have the DLCs. You know, it needs to be units that every single player can have access to without owning any DLC. So I have a plan to address that. But once again, I'll talk about that in a future video. I will say that for Tehenuin, fantastic, great, very, very pleased about that. His chameleonic comrade, Oxiodal, will be receiving new missions to hunt down and eliminate the new demonic enemies who recently arrived on the Immortal Empire's map. And his mission durations will now scale with campaign difficulty? Yo! Making it much harder to thwart chaos if you choose to play at harder levels. Yeah! Oh, that's so kick-ass! So, okay. Oh, dude, are we getting Oxiodal XCOM? Oh, please give us Oxiodal XCOM. So for anyone that's not aware, that's a reference to Mandalore Gaming's review of the Silence and the Fury, which when it came to Oxiodal, I agreed so deeply with, which is that Oxiodal felt like a really good idea that just wasn't made hard enough. It needed to be hard for the idea to actually properly work. Which, if you've never played, I think it's XCOM 2. The concept of XCOM 2, which is a sci-fi strategy game, is that you're kind of like running around the world doing missions, but there are missions that, like, they have a very limited time scale for you to do them. And if you fail those missions, so like you fail to finish them or you fail to do them in time, then not only do you like miss out on all the goodies and loot, but there's actually like a significant penalty that hurts you for the rest of the campaign. So you have these like really difficult timetables that you're trying to balance, in addition to there being dramatic penalties as you fail these missions. So what I would really, really like to see with Oxyotl is the idea that you get less time for the higher difficulty you're playing on. Perfect. That is so good. You know, it really needs to be, if you're playing on Legendary, you should have like 1 turn per mission, genuinely, because you're playing on Legendary. Like, you are playing the highest difficulty, so fuck you. The game should literally be saying fuck you. Like, it should be as mean as possible, spitting in your face if you're playing Oxyotl. If there are 3 missions, you get 3 turns. If there are 4 missions, you get 4 turns. So you need to be maximizing your abilities with Oxyotl, because if you fuck up, you're gonna regret it. And I really, really hope that they add in permanent debuffs, because an Oxyotl campaign, in my opinion, should be a campaign that revolves around you are trying to balance the act of building your empire and your armies, you know, keeping yourself stable while also preventing chaos from overwhelming the world. So I want to see stuff like, so we know there are 3 different calibers of mission, right? There are easy missions, medium missions, hard missions, that determine like the difficulty of your opponent and also determine your reward and the penalty. And what I feel very strongly is that, like, if you fail an easy mission, it should have like, you know, like kind of an effect. Like, it should affect maybe just that army. So like if it tells you, hey, go kill Kairos Fate Weaver, and you fail to do that, but it's an easy mission, then maybe Kairos gets like a bonus 5% physical resistance on his army for the rest of the campaign. But it should only really affect his army, right? Whereas if it's like a medium mission, the failure should be that faction, right? So, or that like type of, that faction. So it's, oh, you didn't kill Scarbrand? Well, guess what? Now Scarbrand faction wide has, maybe Scarbrand gets a lot of money, or Scarbrand faction wide just got plus 3 or 5 melee attack on all units, or Scarbrand faction wide just got 5% missile resistance on all of his units. You know, things that are, you're like, oh shit, like that's kind of a problem. But it's still like mostly contained to a single faction. And then hard missions should be where shit gets crazy. Hard missions should be entire races. So like, oh, you failed to stop this, you failed to like kill this beastman herd, and it was a hard mission. Well, since you did that, all beastmen in the entire game for the rest of the campaign have like plus 10% speed. Or, oh, you failed to stop this Cornate army. Okay, well, all of the monogod Khorne armies in the campaign now have more missile resistance. Or, oh, you failed to stop this Tzeentch army. Well, all Tzeentch armies for the rest of the campaign have plus 10 winds of magic. You know, stuff that, like, if you let it get away from you, it will make these armies absolutely horrifying. And like, give them battle buffs, give them campaign buffs. If I fail a medium mission against beastmen, let it spawn a new Bray herd. If I fail a hard mission against the Warriors of Chaos, let it be that Warriors of Chaos faction wide get plus 10 or plus 5% bonus campaign movement on the campaign map. You know, just stuff where if you fail too many missions as Oxyotl, you should basically lose the campaign. Like, even though you probably don't have like a super centralized area that the AI can easily get to, being that you're in the Southern Chaos Waste, if you fail too many missions, it should basically get to the point where you're just like, I'm fucked. Like, these armies are just too strong. And that's on you. You fucked up. But, you know, if you play on a lower difficulty, you get significantly more time to complete these missions. That's what I gotta see that. I really want to see that, because that would just make Oxyotl a truly unique experience. Not every campaign needs to be new player friendly, and not every campaign needs to be easy. I think it is completely justified for there to be a handful of campaigns within the game that are just like, yeah, this is going to be pretty hard. Like, even if you're playing on an easy difficulty, there are consequences that might be too much for you to overdo. So you may need to play another character to kind of like get your bearings, or you may need to play this character on easy or on normal so you can kind of like figure out what you're doing. Or you may need to introduce some mods to make life a little easier for you. But if you're playing on legendary or you're playing on very hard, yeah, I'm going to do my best to kick your shit in. That's really what I want to see. No, I do not have a masochist kink. Anyway, moving on. The Saurus. The stalwart Saurus will also benefit from changes that help them take on the demonic hordes in battle. Their innate primal instinct ability kicks in earlier, granting them greater bonuses and no longer triggering rampage. There you go. I will say, I don't know how I feel about getting rid of rampage. I understand a lot of people hated rampage, but I never was that bothered by it because you have the cold-blooded mechanic. Like, you have a built-in system to counter rampage with, in that you just left-click on the unit and they stop rampaging. And if you have too many units rampaging, well, you're probably losing anyway. But I've always found that to be an interesting mechanic, and I didn't really think rampage was that bad. In my opinion, because generally speaking, it meant they just attacked the nearest unit without orders. So like most of the time, it wasn't even a bad thing, unless you were playing against a human player that was very, very good at manipulating that against you. But, you know, that's kind of on you. You even have skink lords who have an AoE get rid of rampage ability. You know, you have the big version of Primal Instincts on Tehinuin, and I think I know Tehinuin has it. I don't remember. Wait, no, does Tehinuin have it? Maybe just the red-crested skink has it. I forget who all has it, but some people have it. So yeah, but I mean, at least it still provides leadership, and at least monsters still rampage, so cold-blooded isn't useless. But I do feel like this makes the cold-blooded buff significantly less useful. But I mean, it still gives you pretty good leadership, so it's not useless. So I don't know, maybe I'm just dumb. Anyway, both Saurus characters also get revamped Lord and faction effects to account for this, in addition to helping them develop their own playstyles. Kroq-Gar will focus on creating a coterie of elite Saurus characters with major buffs for Old Bloods and Scar veterans. Ooh, that sounds very sexy. Oh, Kroq-Gar. Oh, I love Kroq-Gar so much. That sounds really fucking cool. The idea that he gets like really buff Scarvets and Old Bloods, like he's bringing back the gang, you know, training the other Saurus characters so they're as strong as he is. Oh baby. While Gorok will enjoy new effects that lean into his defensive nature, while his unique right no longer makes Saurus unbreakable and now grants them barrier as well as immunity to hostile weapon effects like poison. Yo, there's poison immunity? Okay, first up, I'm gonna have to make a separate video on this, but Creative Assembly, if you're somehow watching this and you've made it to almost an hour in this video, I'm really sorry, by the way. I'm really sorry for like everything. But anyway, please, God, give immunity to poison to Tehinuin, like the character, not the faction, but Tehinuin, red-crested skinks, the lord in the unit, ogre butchers, and ogre slaughtermasters. Please give them immunity to poison, or immunity to poison and other types of effects like that, because they literally have that rule in the lore and in the tabletop. That's what red-crested skinks do. When you would so you could upgrade skinks to be sacred spawning of Sotek, which literally just meant they were red-crested. And red-crested skinks had two bonuses. They got +1 weapon skill because they were better at fighting, and they got an immunity to to the to poison and significant immunity to the Skaven on contact disease effects. Because like when a plague sensor bearer would run into close combat with you, at the start of the combat, as they're waving all their crazy fumes around, they would roll a bunch of dice, and for every 4 they got, they would deal a wound that ignored armor to the unit that was like choking on the fumes. But if you were a red-crested skink unit, you only failed on like a 6. So you were like basically immune to it unless you were super unlucky. So I would love to see that ability on those units. And Ogre Butchers and Slaughtermasters were the exact same. They just flat out had the immunity to poison rule, just like Tehenwin did. So please, 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 please make it like either put it on their skill trees or make it just an innate ability they have, so they have it as well in multiplayer. But Tehenwin, Butchers, Slaughtermasters, Red Crested Skink Lords should have immunity to the contact effects stuff. Please. Anyway, moving on. As the premier magic wielders of the setting, the Slawn, including Lord Croak, are getting skill tree tweaks. I don't know why I wanted to say quirks so bad, but it says tweaks, brain. Are getting skill tree skill tree tweaks. I don't know what's going on with my brain. To fit the new magic system in Total War Warhammer 3 while gaining access to powerful effects like Barrier and increases to their winds of magic. That's so great. That's so great. One of the things I love so much about, like, when I saw Barrier on Tzeentch, I was like, they need to give that to Slawn, because Slawn literally have magic barriers. That's their whole thing, is that the reason they sit on those floating thrones, well, there's a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons they sit on those floating thrones is there's a literal barrier that it provides them that blocks people from attacking them. So the fact that they actually have that, and that, that's so exciting to me, because the barrier actually has like an effect in game. Like when something's barrier points are up, and they're being like shot or attacked, you can literally see the barrier like blocking the attacks. So the fact that we're gonna get to see that effect on Slawn, I'm so excited. Okay, so on top of that, Mazdamundi also receives a whopping 50% range increase to all of his spells. Wow, that's actually pretty nice. So he has a 50% increase to spell range. I will say, a part of me kind of hopes that they look at Mazdamundi and change his spells a little bit. A spell that I would really like Mazdamundi to have when he starts his campaign is Soul Quench. Instead of probably, I don't know though, like Apotheosis on him, really, really good. Arcane Unforging, strong spell, like does a lot of damage. Comet, it's gotta have it. He's gotta have Comet. It's too classic of a Lizardman thing. Harmonic Convergence, I guess, but like kind of the thing with him is that he's got 2 light spells. He's got 2 light, 2 heavens, 2 high. What are his light magic spells? He has Net of a Mentok, and oh god, what is his 6th spell? Okay, he's got Harmonic Convergence, Net of a Mentok, Comet of Kansandora, Apotheosis, Arcane Unforging, and Curse of the Midnight Wind. No, so he has 3 heaven spells, 1 light spell, and 2 high spells. Okay, then what I would suggest, what I think they should do is they should replace Harmonic Convergence with Soul Quench, because that would allow him to start the campaign with a magic missile. Like, Harmonic Convergence is a really good spell, don't get me wrong, it is a good spell, but I think it would just work better for him to go 3-2-1 with having 3 high magic spells, 2 heaven spells, and 1 light spell. I think that would just be better. But let me know what you think down in the comment section. Would y'all prefer to have Harmonic Convergence? Because I mean, that melee attack, melee defense buff is really good on Lizardmen. But at the same time, I feel like being able to just like launch magic missiles across the entire fucking map and just start killing enemies before they're even close to you with Mazdamundi would feel really, really good. Because Mazdamundi just doesn't have a cheap damage spell. His only 2 damage spells, being Comet and Arcane Forging, are at the end of his magic skill tree. So at minimum, you have to be like level 6 or 7 before you have access to those, unless you're using some kind of mod. And I don't know. I really feel that he could use a damage spell much earlier. especially with this increased range, because like 50% increased range, what does that really do for him outside? Like that gives him more battlefield control, but like, so okay, I don't have to be as close to Harmonic Converge you, or I don't have to be as close to Net you or to Curse the Midnight Wind you. Like, it's undeniably good, but I feel like if he had a magic missile or a bombardment spell, that would get more mileage. Well, he does have a bombardment spell. It's Comet, so he's fine with Comet. But yeah, I think giving him a magic missile instead of Harmonic Convergence would be a good change too. Anyway, finally, Nakai will enjoy a variety of balance changes, including tech tree updates to boost his economy, as well as new and improved benefits upon constructing temples to the old ones. He'll also benefit from some of the fundamental improvements to diplomacy that were introduced in Warhammer 3, notably improving how the AI interacts with vassal factions. Hooray! I really hope he's good now. All right, moving on. Dark. So yeah, all good. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Dark Elves. Let's move to the Druki, who, in addition to being in a prime position to benefit from the new sea lanes, have seen big changes to their slaves mechanic. Previously, this was a feature that resulted in insane late-game economic performance with relatively little interaction from the player. As such, in Warhammer 3, slaves are now considered a faction-level resource rather than something you stow in a province. Slaves can now be spent at numerous buildings to generate income or invested in 3 powerful slave diktats to benefit a specific province. For a long while, the Druki have had a complicated relationship with chaos, so the influx of demonic factions has had a few notable changes. Morathi now gets unique interactions with Slanesh corruption and can even recruit demonettes. Yes! Yes! Full cult of pleasure. Full cult of pleasure. There is one particular person on this earth who I would love to call up right now and be like, I fucking told you so, who I argued with for years back in like Warhammer 1 or Warhammer 2, who was always like, Morathi, like, he just, oh god, fucking annoying person. Anyway, fuck you, person, you know who you are. I don't think you watch this anymore because we haven't talked in years, but fuck you. Anyway, moving on. I was right. I told you it was gonna happen. While Malice's possession ability now allows for more frequent use of Zarkan and interacts differently with new corruption types. Great, so presumably Zarkan, being a greater demon, is now going to allow you to have a lot of cool, like, demon buffs. Last of all, Rakarth can now capture and tame a host of new beasts, including Sabertusk and Feral Bears. Very, very cool. So Rakarth has more beasties. They also did reveal in a Q&A. Oh, wait, does this actually, like, link to... Oh, okay, this is... Oh, huh. I did not realize they have, like, a whole video for this. Okay, I'll have to watch that later. But we do know that Drycha also got access to the Feral Bears. Drycha does not have access to Sabertusks, presumably because Sabertusks are not native to forests. They are a mountain species, and you would never see them in a forest, except for, you know, if there are ogres nearby. So the Feral Bears are for both Drycha and Rakarth, and the Sabertusks are just for Rakarth. So awesome, badass, great, cool. I will say, I really, really like the change to the slave mechanic. Once again, I know there are some people who are really big into min-maxing who are not going to like this change. I know Legend's not going to like this change. And to be clear, just because I've mentioned him twice now, I love Legend as a person. I don't agree with a lot of his opinions on Warhammer, but, you know, he's a friend. Anyway, moving on. I just want to make that clear. Like, I'm not, like, trying to be like, fuck Legend. Like, he's a good friend of mine, but we have many differences of opinion, but that's normal. That's, you know, just we have different. We like to play the game very, very different ways. But I really like that slaves are now phrasing. I really like that it is now it's a faction resource. The old system for slaves was just super boring. It had zero interaction. There was very, very little player input. Literally, the most you could do to influence the slave system is that you could go to a province and tell it, stop receiving slaves, receive some slaves, or receive more slaves. And basically at least all I would do, like the only interaction I would have is I would take over a province and decide, okay, this is my money-making province, so I'm going to build like all the slave pens I can here. And I'm going to tell this place to receive extra slaves, and I'm going to tell every single other place to never receive slaves until that place fills up, which virtually never happened, or was very, very infrequent, at least until I could take like Karen Carr, and then I would make Karen Carr my new slave province. And like, you could get these god tier economies, but it was boring. It was so fucking boring. And like the only way it was quote unquote interesting would be that, oh, I have lots of money. Like, look how rich I am. Isn't that fun? But no, I didn't think it was fun. Like, big number make brain go stonk, but like I just didn't care. It just wasn't that interesting to me. This sounds like it's actually interesting. So based on the fact that they say that you can invest slaves in 3 powerful buffs to a province, that sounds to me a lot like Slaanesh. So Slaanesh has his devotees mechanic or currency, and the devotees of Slaanesh can be spent on 3 provincial buffs. So it's this little like bonus menu that I think a surprising amount of people miss, but every single province can have its own thing going. And it's these 3 little buttons in the bottom left once you've selected like a settlement in a province, and you can sacrifice devotees to activate one of these 3 buffs. Sounds like slaves are going to be the same thing. So you can you're using slaves to do things. Not only can they now be spent at numerous buildings, that's so cool. So like, you're still going to be generating significant income. It just sounds like they're not going to be passively generating income. If you want slaves to be generating income, you need to put them to work. You need to do things with them. You need to sacrifice or expend them in order for them to do things that then benefit you financially, economically, or buff wise. And the other thing that's super cool about this that may not be very readily apparent is this means that slaves are a resource. You know what you could do with resources? You can trade resources. I really, really, really hope this means that when we get the Chaos Dwarfs, either later this year or next year, that the Chaos Dwarfs also have a faction level slave resource, and that you could trade with the Dark Elves. Because slave trading with the Dark Elves and the Chaos Dwarfs, that's gotta be a feature. That's gotta be a feature. That would be so thematic and make me feel like a terrible person when I'm alone at night in the dark and trying to go to sleep. But it would be a really thematic, loreful thing that would allow for some really cool interactions between those races and would add like a really interesting new way to do diplomacy. Because not only would you be trading with money, but you could also be trading with these faction-specific resources for factions that share similar resources, which I just think would be really, really cool. And last but not least, Norsca. All right, Norsca. Let's talk cold, angry, and primed to raid. Norsca has somewhat tumultuous entry into the series with their unique ability to construct outposts instead of regular settlements. Built on the foundation of the climate-locked occupations of Warhammer 1, this design did not make a graceful transition into Warhammer 2. You say that like anything about Norsca made a graceful transition to Warhammer 2. Where it was originally designed to grant them unparalleled flexibility, it instead became their greatest weakness. So now if you take one thing home when you're raiding these shores, it's the fact that Norsca is now a regular occupation faction with access to their complete building tree anywhere in the world. Hooray! Hopefully they gave them some other stuff to like make them interesting, because like not that those things weren't interesting, but like they don't have many unique features at the moment now. Like they basically got like monster hunts and more raise options. Anyway, like before, players can dedicate the ruins of their enemies to one of the 4 dark gods in order to gain their favor, but there was a massive disparity in the rewards given. As such, we've evened things out a bit. Full dedication to the Crow no longer causes a admittedly mostly impotent global plague. Rather, you will be joined by Burble Smirk Spewpit, the exalted great unclean one. Ooh, that's spicy. Okay, so you get a greater demon of Slaanesh on your team if you go full Slaanesh. Greater demon of Nurgle on your team if you go full Nurgle. I like that. Full dedication to the Hound no longer gives you access to the Iceforge Legion. Rather, you will be joined by Kilgore Slaymaim, an exalted hero of Khorne. Very cool. Very cool. All reward characters grant their army an incredibly powerful boon that twists their profile to align closer to the Dark God's ideals forces. For example, Azric the Maze Keeper, who is the Lord of Change, I'm assuming he's still a basic Lord of Change instead of a exalted Lord of Change, but I guess we'll have to see, because that would be interesting if they're all kind of different, right? Burble Smirk Spew Pit is a Lord, Kilgore Slaymaim is a hero, Azric the Maze Keeper I guess would be a monster in that case, like a regular Lord of Change, and then, oh god, what is the Slaanesh guy's name? Kihar the Tormentor. Well, Kihar the Tormentor is also a hero. Okay, so maybe Tzeentch and Nurgle give you lords, and then Khorne and Slaanesh give you heroes. That would actually be a pretty good parallel. So maybe Azric the Maze Keeper is now an exalted Lord of Change. I could see that. For example, Azric's forces enjoy access to barriers, magical weapons, and global Winds of Magic generation benefits. That's super badass. That is super badass. So not only do these characters grant a really cool, so they grant really cool army buffs. Very nice. If you just had the terrifying realization that we didn't say where the Iceforge Legion went, don't worry, your favorite Hell Cannon battery has become a regular regiment of renown that unlocks once you reach the appropriate level. Awesome! The Iceforge Legion never made sense for Khorne. It never did. I have no fucking idea why the Iceforge Legion was considered a Khornate unit. That was one of the most bizarre things. It's like, what makes me think of Khorne? Chaos Dwarf siege weapons. It's like, what? Like, I know Khorne has skull cannons, but I feel like extrapolating that to say he has a legion of a cannon barrage of hell cannons is like, that seems like a bit of a leap. So I'm really glad that they're just a undivided, I guess, cool thing that you get as a regular regiment of renown. That's great. Awesome. Huge, awesome change. I'm really excited to see these new characters. Commandments! Being fully settled and capable of holding complete provinces all over the world, Norsca has a full set of commandments to enact. I really wish they told us what they were, but that's really cool. Resources. Wine, furs, and everything in between. Norsca can now construct buildings to exploit almost all resources for local or global bonuses. Hey, I love that. I love resources. Unique resources, I think, are just a super exciting way to spice up a settlement while also giving you really, really cool access. But I feel like they need to do something. Like, it's not, for me, it's not good enough that you just get them for, like, trade. Like, I really want to see them have an effect. Whether it's, like, upkeep production for certain units or recruitment bonus or, like, stat bonuses, whatever. So I'm really glad to see that. Capital targets. With new forces of order come new cities to raise for unique benefits. The Kurgan hordes have never taken Wei Jin, but perhaps they only lacked a unifying iron fist. Awesome. So expanded, we're going to have an expanded tech tree for Norsca. Kick ass. So presumably they're going to add, I guess they're going to add Kislev and Cathay to that. It's going to be weird. Like, I wonder how they're going to try and, like, finagle the tech tree to work, because Kislev is part of the old world, so they probably should be with the old world techs, but at the same time, they're a new race, so they should probably be with the new race techs. I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyway, to tie us off, let's head off the question on everyone's mind. No, this is not the Norsca rework. These changes are about freeing Norsca from the shackles of their outposts and giving them a taste of the fresh new powers of the Dark Gods in Warhammer 3. Like the rest of Immortal Empires, this is just the beginning. The foundation upon which to build and make future tweaks to different factions. Kick ass! So, presumably, we will get to see a full Norsca rework sometime in the future. This is not it. This is just to make them bearable. Very, very exciting. Very, very exciting. All right. I've already talked really heavily in depth about all this, and this video is very long. So I'm going to get the hell out of here. Once this video is public and it's like out and about, I will be coming on for a live stream to talk about everything and probably also play like some Vermintide 2 or something, because it's Friday and I feel like playing some games, especially now that my air conditioning is fixed. So hope you're all having a great day. Let me know what you think of the changes down below. Is there anything you're super excited about? Is there anything you're disappointed about? Let me know what y'all think. I really want to see, like, although I don't respond to them, I do read the vast majority of everything y'all comment. I tend to be laying in bed and just kind of like shifting through it when I read them. Yeah, anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully you can join me on the live stream later tonight. Worst case scenario, I'd probably be going live around like 7 p.m. CST, but just keep an eye on my Twitter and my Discord, because I always send out alerts when I'm live there. And tomorrow we will probably, unless CA reveals something, which I wouldn't put it past them, but if they don't reveal anything, tomorrow I think we're going to talk about the whole Confederation thing. That's become a really, really big talking point over the last day or so. So I'll see you guys then. Take care. Be safe. Bye-bye.